Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Jijiga, Somali Regional State. Distinguished ambassadors, UN and NGO representatives, heads and representatives of development partners, elders and government officials, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and thanks for coming. About a year ago, we met here to discuss the idea of developing a resilience program. Today, we are here to launch a well-articulated multi-year resilience strategy and an investment plan that can guide implementation of that program. I would like to thank the government bureaus, particularly the Bureau of Planning, Finance, and other development partners who invested time and energy to develop this strategy. This first year, 2023-2028 plan represents a significant milestone in our journey towards a stronger and more resilient future for our communities in Somali Region. Somali Region has long faced the challenges of environmental degradation, climatic variability, and socio-economic insecurity. It's our belief that this plan will not only serve as a roadmap to overcome these challenges, but will also lead to sustainable development and prosperous future through building resilient society that can thrive in the face of natural and man-made calamities. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to all the esteemed participants today. Your presence here is a reflection of the shared commitment we have towards the well-being and progress of the Somali people. With the engagement of government institutions, UN agencies, and member donor assistance group, other donors and NGOs, we have a diverse range of expertise and resources at our disposal to make this plan a resounding success. This multi-year resilience program is organized around 4 strategic pillars. Firstly, we aim to build resilient livelihoods, focusing on creating sustainable economic opportunities, enhancing agricultural productivity, and promoting entrepreneurship. By investing in the skills and capacities of our people, we will empower communities to become self-reliant and economically prosperous. Second, we are committed to strengthening social protection measures. Through targeted interventions, we will ensure that vulnerable groups have access to essential services, including healthcare, education, and social safety nets. Our goal is to create a compassionate society that leaves no one behind, where every individual has equal opportunity and protection. Third, we recognize the importance of promoting sustainable natural resource management. Our environment, with its rich biodiversity and fragile ecosystems, needs our utmost care and attention. By implementing sustainable practices, we will preserve our natural resources for generations to come, acknowledging that a healthy environment is the foundation of our resilience. Lastly, we are determined in enhancing climate change resilience. The effects of climate change are far-reaching and impact the most vulnerable among us, the pastoralists. By implementing adaptation and mitigation measures, we will reduce our vulnerability to climate-related disasters and secure a sustainable future for our region. Ladies and gentlemen, our commitment to this multi-year resilience plan is unwavering. We are determined to work together, hand in hand, to overcome the complex challenges that lie ahead. Together, we have the power to transform adversity into opportunity and build a thriving Somali regional state. I encourage all participants to actively engage in the implementation of this plan, be it through resource mobilization, technical expertise, or knowledge sharing. Let us strengthen partnerships and deeper collaboration to ensure its success. Our combined efforts will make a tangible difference in the lives of our citizens and demonstrate our dedication to their well-being. The journey towards resilience begins today, and I'm confident that with your support and dedication, we will achieve remarkable outcomes. Together, let us embark on this transformation path towards a brighter future where the Somali Regional State stands tall as a shining example of resilience, hope, and prosperity. Thank you all, and I declare our day open. Thank you.
Excellencies, President Mustafa Omar, cabinet members, Ambassador Hans Lundqvist from Sweden, my colleagues from EU and USAID as well as UN agencies, colleagues. Good morning to you all. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about how we got to this point of the multi-year resilience plan. Now, the origins of the multi-year resilience plan lie in a discussion, as His Excellency referred to, between himself and the UN Resident Coordinator, Humanitarian Coordinator, and myself in March last year. And to back up that discussion, there was a note that the UN had prepared, coordinated by UNDP, to sort of input into the discussion. This discussion took place against the background of, as we have heard from the Chief of Staff, Hussein, of a severe drought and an entrenched pattern of recurring crises, both natural and man-made. It's very important to stress, which had created or triggered almost permanent crisis management and long-term dependence on large-scale humanitarian assistance, as Duvali just pointed out right now. During that discussion, there was a meeting of minds that this situation was unsustainable. It could not go on. To continue down this path, again, as Duvali said, to continue with business as usual would trap Somali region in a vicious cycle. You get stuck at a low level of development, which would then make crises more likely in frequency and severity in the future, further damaging development prospects, and then that would invite more crises down the road. This was not the future that the Somali regional government envisioned for the region, and frankly, this is also something that there was an evaluation, and we are all guilty of what happened following that evaluation. In 2017, another very serious drought that occurred in the Somali region, the humanitarian actors commissioned an evaluation to find out how did we do and what can we learn. There were 6 or 7 recommendations made to try to escape from this cycle of crisis after crisis after crisis. Only one, when we looked back during the preparation of this multi-year resilience plan, only one had been implemented. So there was actually, the lessons learned are very important to bear in mind because many of them were actually not implemented. Now, in the discussion, building resilience was seen as a smart solution at multiple levels because it focused on a few things. Again, as was just presented, it focuses on the root or structural causes of crisis. And by doing so, it makes their recurrence less likely. It doesn't completely prevent crises, but it makes their recurrence less likely. And when they do occur, unfortunately, as they will, to make them less damaging. And these factors included, and this is a point that was emphasized repeatedly by His Excellency and by the Cabinet, these include factors that contribute to potential political instability, that peace is essential. And the history of the region, as was pointed out earlier on, suggests that without that political stability, without that social peace, without that political consensus, if you like, it would not be possible to move ahead. And this is a very, very important factor in looking at resilience and in bringing the integrated approach. It's not just about economics, not just about the social, not just about the environmental on their own, or not just the political, but all of them together in order to achieve resilience. The next, again, a point to emphasize, was the nexus between humanitarian, development, and peace issues. And to be quite honest, I see that I've been in Ethiopia now for 4 years. I have heard a lot of talk about the nexus. People have written on it. People have talked about it. This program, to the credit of the Somali regional government, to their great credit, is the first operational, practical example of how to try to address the nexus in the context of Somali region and possibly other contexts. This is not theoretical, it's very practical. The third is a very important point, future forward. That this plan has tried, no plan is perfect, to take into account the impacts of climate change, economic changes that are happening in this region and in Ethiopia, and in our sub-region, and the demography of Somali region. What would be their impact on livelihoods, pastoralists, agro-pastoralists, settled agricultural, manufacturing-based livelihoods? What would be the implication on the ability to continue with these livelihoods? What was the potential? What would need to change? On settlement patterns, as has been mentioned, that perhaps a concentration of population is needed. On natural resource management and food security. And the final point, as was pointed out just now, was how do we make the best use of very limited resources at the regional level, at federal level, and even in donor resources. Because for every dollar invested, as was proven here, shown here, and the evidence is strong, you save much more by reducing the costs incurred by crisis. This is the smart way to invest. Not in individual sectors on their own, but together with resilience as the objective. With the go-ahead of His Excellency, the process for the preparation of this plan kicked off in April last year. So very quickly after the initial discussion, it had 3 stages. The first one was the development of what's called the RNCA, the Resilience Needs and Capacity Assessment, providing a very solid evidence base for planning. What was presented just now by Dubale and will come from Sam and others is just a small snapshot of the really a lot of data collection and a lot of analysis from multiple sources that fed into the preparation of this plan. The second thing was the preparation of a strategy. What will be the strategy given that we wish to achieve a much more resilient Somali region over the medium to long term? And third, that strategy led to the preparation of the 5-year MYRP, Multi-Year Resilience Plan. It's an investment plan, which is designed to be very practical and actionable. It's very, very important to emphasize that the zones and waredas that have been identified, and you'll hear about them in just a few minutes, were part of that process. So this was not something that was cooked up in Addis. It was not something that was cooked up even just in Jijiga with people based in Jijiga, but actually with the people affected by this investment plan, who will be affected. So I just want to underline that this has been a very considered, thoughtful, methodical process that has yielded this plan. It's not perfect again, but it is solid. It's credible, and most importantly, it is actionable. And I want to stress, and getting to the end, what is remarkable is that this has been a partnership from day one, with strong regional leadership and ownership, without which, frankly, this would not succeed, and this would not have come this far already. And the vehicle for that was the Joint Technical Working Group. There was a Joint Technical Working Group that had government, different branches of government, it had development partners, and there were repeated discussions as well with civil society and academia in particular. And for that, I really would like to thank His Excellency President Mustafa Omar and the regional government for their vision, commitment, and drive that was evident in the work of this Joint Technical Working Group. This was not a working group driven by donors, driven by development partners, but it was led by the regional government, and that makes a world of difference. I want to thank my co-chair. The UN had a whole group, and the UN's effort was co-chaired by UNDP and UNOCHA, Development and Humanitarian, and that was very, very good. And we had, in addition to UNDP, 10 other UN agencies involved. This is a serious UN commitment, and I would like to mention who they are. They include FAO, IFAD, IOM, UNICEF, UNFPA, witness UN Women, and we have the representative of UN Women, Cecile, with us here today, UNHCR, WHO, and WFP, including also then the resident coordinator's office. So it was a collective effort and a serious collective effort. I really want to thank Tim is here, and others are here, Dubali and others are here, USAID, which has been engaged very actively in that technical working group throughout the process, and the European Union, who is here, which has offered real encouragement and support to the initiative. And so here we are, 16 months later, and it's really time now to make the plan a reality. And if it works, and at UNDP and at the UN, we are confident that it can. This multi-year resilience plan will make a difference for Somali region. I am very confident of that, and I think it is perfectly capable of setting an example for the rest of Ethiopia and perhaps beyond. Thank you very much.
The multi-year resilience program at 3 stages, starting with the resilience needs and capacity assessment, which form the foundation for developing the strategy and later on the investment plan. These are the processes that Tura mentioned from March with the first meeting with the president, and then subsequently in April when we held the first meeting of the Joint Technical Working Group down until November. There were a bit of other works that took place after November, December, and that caused a bit of delay for the launching. And they may look a little bit tiny, but in your document you can have a clear set of which operators were selected from which zones. So out of all the 11 zones, we were able to identify at least every operator to benefit at every stage of the implementation process. And the map shows you the geographical location of those selected operators.
So we prepared a detailed plan, a detailed financial plan for each of the 18 target Warada, and also for the second phase Warada of the Kebbi Warada. So some of these program priorities Warada and region will implement, and some of them also all at region, and one of them is only at Warada level. So principally, when we exercised this one, we reached that 770 million US dollar will be the cost of this program.
I'm asked to share. We have been in a part of this journey with regional government and UNDP and other development partners developing the strategy, and our learnings were included. But this morning I was asked to share, our experience collectively with development partners, and we are starting this resilience strategy with something. We are not starting from the scratch, and there are lots of learning. So I will be sharing from USAID and also other partners the experience. And as Dr. Hussein said, I wanted to start, with defining what resilience is, because we need to have, for collective action, we need to have collective understanding and defining the problem very well and how we are doing it. So this is USAID's definition, and globally well taken, and it is determined in terms of ability of people, households, communities, countries, systems, both formal and informal, to mitigate before the shocks. As Dr. Hussein was saying, there are lots of shocks, and after shocks also to adapt, to be flexible, and of course after the shocks as well to recover, so that we'll minimize the vulnerability and have inclusive growth. This is being taken up well by other development partners, because the abilities, we need to also measure the resilience. So resilience we define in terms of abilities and capacity, so that we can also monitor and gauge the progress.
For us, it's really important to work with the communities. So before we have an identification of the most suitable sites, and then it's really crucial to have the community buy-in, because otherwise, I think we all agree on that, it doesn't make sense.
Now, I would like to invite the President, His Excellency Mustafa Abubakar, to chair the plenary discussion.
Right, thank you all. We will start the plenary session. I think we have seen the plan, and which includes the strategy, the investment plan, the locations of areas selected, the thinking of the regional government, and the collaboration required from partners. So the contributions to be made, I think, should mainly focus on what do we foresee in terms of implementing this plan and the way forward. We can highlight if there are deficiencies in any of the process of the outcome, but I think that what would be most useful will be concrete ideas on how to implement this plan. And I'll be giving the chance to participants to give their comments. If there are some questions, you can present so that the people who worked on the development of the plan can respond to.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would just like to make a few points, 4 or 5 points, really emphasizing some of the things my colleagues have already said and perhaps adding a few. The first one, which hasn't come up yet, but it is important, is the role of the federal government. And I think it would really be helpful to raise awareness of this program among key federal bodies, including the Ministry of Finance, EDRMC, RRS, and others. So I think the federal government angle, at least in terms of really building the support and awareness of this program at the federal level, I think would be very important. It's something to pay attention to from our perspective. The second thing is, it's been mentioned already by Roberto, is the whole of society approach. And just to underline that something like this is not just for the government alone to do. It is not just a governmental undertaking, but it's an undertaking that covers the whole of society, and different parts of society have been mentioned. And I would like to highlight 2. One Roberto also mentioned right now. Civil society and non-governmental organizations, incredibly important role to play in helping to make something like the MYRP succeed. And of course, the role of academia is also incredibly important, in addition to what has been referred to, the private sector, public-private partnerships, and of course, the role of specific groups like women. I do want to underline this, and I'm sure my colleague Cecile will do that, and of youth, as mentioned earlier on. The third point is to highlight 2 potential stumbling blocks, which really need attention. We think from our experience, from what we've learned across the world, trying to do area-based programming, for example, which is that we really need an inclusive, cross-sectoral, multi-level, that is Jijiga down, and or rather Kebele up, flexible, adaptive, as Steve pointed out, planning, coordination, and financing system. Everybody who is key to the implementation of the MYRP in government and outside government needs to be around the table to help plan, implement, monitor, review, evaluate this effort. This is the creation, let us say, the lessons learned everywhere almost is that sectoral silos, everybody operating in their separate silos, donor silos, where different donor programs are operating on their own without reference to each other, could kill the very essence of a program like the Multi-Year Resilience Plan, which is to integrate, not fragment, to pull together. The second is to bring the humanitarian players, actors in. This is another silo that is really harmful to something like resilience building. The humanitarians operate on one system, the development players operate another system, and the 2 never meet. So the participation of humanitarians and really bringing the humanitarians and development people together to plan, to implement, to review, and so on, is going to be incredibly important. In that respect, the UN, and within the UN, UNDP, I hate to commit my successor, but I'll do it anyway, my UNDP and other UN agencies based on the specific areas of concern. It's one of the things we do is build capacity, invest in systems, build skills, and this is something that we would certainly be very interested in helping to make a robust, to help the regional government create a really robust planning, planning, coordination, and financing system. Third point, just on the financing, is that maybe there are two considerations in financing, and there are several others, I'm sure. One is to look beyond conventional sources. So donors are important, but to look beyond donors. And we can talk about a number of things. It's been mentioned already by Abdur Rahman, the diaspora, but also creative ways of attracting diaspora funding. Funding from non-traditional partners, such as the Gulf states, also potential, given the characteristics of Somali region. And there are many other things that one could explore. So one is going beyond conventional ways of raising money. And second is to tap the broadest possible pool of financing. Not to look at just one or two channels of financing, but to look at the broadest pool of financing that could include even community level contributions that can be in kind as well, which can be very important in the context of a lot of the grassroots work. The fifth point and final point is probably to suggest that we may need to consider a two-stage approach to financing. One for this fiscal year that's kicking off, for the first year of the MYRP, at which it's really impressive to see that the regional level has already committed substantial resources, or will be committing substantial resources. So regional funding is one. The link to the humanitarians is the second. There is really not sufficient resources, but enough flowing in that they should be really linked to this effort and not stand on their own. And finally, also steering or aligning existing donor-funded projects. There are quite a few projects, I know of World Bank projects, African Development Bank projects, bilateral funded projects, the ones on durable solutions, for example, as Ambassador Lucas was pointing out, and others that can be steered or aligned with the MYRP. And finally, for the next fiscal year, what we might need to consider is a dedicated resource mobilization strategy that yields results latest by the second quarter of 2024, and the UN and UNDP within it would be very happy to support that effort. Thank you.
Although I very much applaud the planning and the organizational structures of making financial decisions annually and quarterly discussions, I really hope there's an emphasis on how this will be an adaptive approach and how we can all be coming together on a regular basis to tweak and adjust, because this will change, and that is good. And as much effort as we put into this building this strategy, even more of it should be put into the implementation and more seriousness for that. Second observation, and it's both on what I saw on the screen, but also as I look out amongst this crowd, is the role of women in the implementation of this strategy, both in leadership, budgeting, decision-making, ownership, making decisions. Absent the role of women, I think you're missing out on over half of your human capital in this region and the people who will be making a lot of decisions for households. But finally, perhaps just to end with USAID's contribution to this strategy and the intention to go deep. We were able to use this strategy to go to the American Congress and say, there's a vision here in Ethiopia. There's a vast need, as been outlined earlier, and they've been selective, made tough decisions. And we were able to request some supplemental resources to invest in the lowlands of Ethiopia. And I'm very pleased to announce that we have been recently granted $25 million to invest in the lowlands of Ethiopia. The vast majority is going to be here in the Somali region, focusing on water. We could not have received those resources without this vision and without that focus and without the ability to work, that we can convince that this is a real plan that's trying to be inclusive, that's bringing in other donors. And so long as you are continuing to show that leadership, it's much easier for us to partner with you and to galvanize more resources. We will continue to fight for more resources for Ethiopia and the people of this region, and we are extremely grateful and thrilled to see this strategy, and we will be with you hand in hand during all of its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Let me first congratulate the Somali region for this, for the establishment of this strategy, multi-year strategy. Not only this is the right step to mitigate the effects of adverse events, but is in fact the tool that we partners need in order to find synergies and develop further our cooperation. I'm coming from my experience in the European Union in the disaster management. And there is a say that we had in Europe that the best way to face a disaster is not to be prepared for it. And disaster will happen. So we need to prepare, and we need to increase the whole society approach to diminish the impact and to be able to bounce back quickly and more efficiently.
As we know, resilience is also driven by infrastructure. At least infrastructure has an important role to play in enabling communities and the economies rebuild from shocks. So it's very important that infrastructure investments are well developed with sustainable considerations to ensure that when they are pursued, that they will stand both the test of time and serve the communities and the economy as they're fully intended. The second point that I would really like to add is this aspect of accountability that's already been mentioned. The coordination systems that are put in place in this strategy cannot be understated. I'd like to appreciate the work of the regional authorities for their leadership in developing this strategy, because ultimately the buck will stop with you to some extent.
As a World Food Program, we look at leveraging on already existing projects in cash and food assistance to support multi-year resilience plan. And we look forward also to be part of the joint technical working group that will provide the support needed to get the resilience off the ground. There are a lot of risks. It's quite an ambitious project. It requires a lot of funding, and we all need to join our efforts by demonstrating that even with the little resources that we already have now, we can demonstrate the work that you're doing. Thank you again, Your Excellency.
So as my other colleagues said, I also congratulate the region for the comprehensive strategy. And he is really an exemplary, and as has been said, even though we said, this is an excess approach many times, we didn't see, in the concrete terms. As UNFPA in this region, we have been supporting the regions for many years. Yes, all the communities are affected by the recurrent drought and other natural and man-made casualties. But still, among the most affected, there are also very highly affected, like women and adults and girls. Imagine a pregnant woman already suffering, as an IDP, or really having lack of access to health care. So UNFPA will continue really engaging in addressing, really saving lives for those who bring life to this planet, for the mothers. They really need to really give birth safely. So we'll continue our endeavors in this regard. And also in these regions, there are quite a number of practices like female genital mutilations and others that makes the women and girls to have double burden. So we will continue supporting that technically and also with a small amount of funding financially. So we will continue that. Also, recently UNFP has an initiative called Use Peace and Security. As has been known, really engaging youth in peace interventions is very important. And I really appreciate the region really to be an example currently for Ethiopia, in terms of internal peace, especially the peace within the region. That is the model, and even more than that is thinking ahead that to make this peace to sustain is also highly appreciated. And I think the challenge we have here in Africa is we may be peaceful for some years, but then we may relapse. So really looking forward and really working in peace areas is very important. So again, I would like to commit as UNFP that we continue our efforts. And thank you so much for giving the chance.
And if I come to this multi-year resilience strategy, we were part of this document preparation, in the preparation of this document from the beginning, and we have put in our inputs. And this document, we hope, will also contribute in the improvement of women inclusion and participation. The areas that we give emphasis was women participation and empowerment, gender mainstreaming in all components of this strategy. We were also giving priority is supporting women's cooperatives by giving grants. These are some of the priority areas we included in improving, reducing SGPV and GPV by developing, improving the case management. And these are some points we include in this strategy. And so we hope this strategy will also contribute in the improvement of women participation. Thank you very much.
With this, I think I will I'll take a few minutes to conclude. I think a lot has been said about the multi-resilience plan, so I won't give up much time to speak about it in my concluding remarks. I will focus on providing the bigger background and context and the way forward in terms of thinking as a regional government. The genesis of the Media Revenue Plan, as you know, was a drought. And we are talking English today, but the same questions that have been raised here were asked by our people as well. Year in, year out, the drought is coming back. So what's the plan? How in Somalia? What solutions do you have for this? This was actually coming in different forms, in feedbacks from the beneficiary communities, on social media, on the mainstream media, on meetings among ourselves. So we thought, okay, we can't do all of it, but we should prepare something. And on the government side, we started immediately to refocus our budget to productive sectors, agriculture and livestock. In the first 2 years, I think the bulk of our budget have gone to basic service provision, which is equally important. You have to have the roads, you have to have the schools, you have to have the education facilities and water projects for our communities to be uplifted. And these are basic components of resilience by themselves. But we thought we didn't give enough time and resource to agriculture and livestock, which mainly are about food security. And food security was a key problem we were facing. So in line with that thinking, we have developed 2 initiatives. Agricultural transformation plan is developed, and the livestock transformation was already developed, but now we have also the added advantage that this is now taken as the main component as a party level nationally. So both agendas are moving, in our region now, simultaneous to the multi-resilient plan. Some of the activities will overlap, obviously. The multi-resilience plan, therefore, is a response to the health drought. How do we think ahead so that the vulnerabilities are reduced? And I think the ideas are clear. We will need resources, but much more important is to have a plan. Oftentimes, when donors and everybody comes here, the first question is, do you have a plan? Now we can confidently say, yes, we have a plan. Yes, we have a plan, it is here. It's not perfect as said, it will have to be adapted along the way. But I think the thinking is very clear, and we believe it will work with the commitment shown here today, and also with the structures we have built as a government. On the wider issues, I think peace is a singular major contributor to development and to social transformation. And we have gained a lot from the peace we had in the last 5 years. The priority of the government is to sustain this peace, which is a pillar of the resilience itself. It shouldn't be seen as a separate investment. It's a pillar. Nothing can work without the peace being sustained. For that, we believe the starting point is managing the politics well, and therefore political outreach, widening the political space, democratic governance, free and fair elections, all of this come into that. So along the way, we have to take steps to ensure that the peace we have now does not break down. The other element of peace is security as well. They are related. By security, I mean the enforcement capacity also to be there. Should we face also destabilizing forces like Al-Shabaab or like other kinds of challenge to the rule of law? So in that, reforming the police, the police to be a more regular police outfit that understands and respects the rule of law, that understands human rights, is also parallelly done, and huge improvement in that regard. One of the shining successes we can be proud of as a government is transforming the mentality of the special forces here to be a force that now respects human rights, that now is governed by the law. So, but it's a work of progress, it needs to be enforced. And the second area of focus for us is efficient use of the regional available budget. Before we look for other sources, we also have to look at how we are managing the resources we have. We believe there was a lot of wastages, a lot of misuse that needs to be managed. A good amount of money can be gained from that misuse if we can stop that. And if we can put that into into real projects that help people. In that regard, last year was really exemplary. After the cabinet endorsed the budget, the parliament had an oversight, parliamentarians. And that's why different organs of the government working differently and holding one another accountable is important. I think the parliament recommended that we relook at the budget because they found there's a room for improvement in terms of the amount of budget that they deemed was soft programs. And I think we saved close to 1 billion through that review. That went into water projects, into road projects, from assessments, from trainings, which are very important, but in terms of priority, why would you spend that amount of money on those programs when your other projects are stopped for lack of funding? Or why not invest on drought response? So I think that was exemplary. We also expect tough time this time when we present our budget and oversight. So improving that oversight is critical. So the budget we have is two. One is the one we get from the federal government as part of the allocation to the region through the budget formula of the country. This year it has not increased. The other is the revenue we generate. And we have to also increase our revenue capacity because like this year, the budget has not increased, but we plan to increase our revenue projection from 9 billion to 16 billion. And the money is not much But coming from 3.2 billion at the start of 5 years ago, we have now collected 9.7 billion this year. The plan was to collect 9 billion, but we collected 9.7. I'm sure we could have collected 2-3 billion more, or that has been. So the assessment of the potential is not yet complete. We are enlisting some support to get a real assessment of how much we can generate actually. But this year we are planning 60. We are very ambitious in order to cover for the budget deficit that we will in real terms, because the budget has not increased while inflation is there. So 16 billion is what we allocated. We are confident we will get there, but so many accountability measures have to be taken, including adding more or taking the Auditor General the office that was only at the head at the regional level to zones, at least 2 zones, to increase accountability of the Warada budget particularly right now. Right now we think we have made progress at the regional level, but at the Warada level there is a room for improvement. And 40% of the budget goes to the Waradas, which does not mean 60% goes to GGL. Out of the 60% that we manage is managed at the regional level, but projects are done at the Warada level. So a good chunk of this 60% also goes to the Waradas through water projects, schools, technical schools and all. But management is here, and gradually we have to also take it down. So we have to manage the budget we have this year. We have to look at how expenditure and try to reduce unnecessary expenses. We have to raise revenues, which we have done over the last couple of years, from 3.2 billion to 9.7. This account, if we succeed in collecting 16 billion next year, this accounts to 45% of the total budget of the region, the revenue share. Coming from 10% 5 years ago, this is huge, and the plan is actually to collect as much as we get from the federal government in the coming years. It's possible if the private sector and the other investments we hope take place. In terms of budget, we also count on donors programs, and this material resilience plan is also an opportunity to get more resources into the region. We should also be able to bring more resources apart from the revenue the government raises, apart from the federal allocations. We should bring much more money to the region through the private sector, from the diaspora, and also from the development partners. And the material resilience plan, in terms of funding, fits into this. In terms of programming, it goes beyond that. It also goes about to where I'm going to talk about women empowerment, institutional building. It goes to those. But from funding perspective, we also see this. How much can we attract this year through these different strategies we have developed, including the durable solutions, which also will come up. The third element that we have to focus on now is institutional building, particularly focusing on human resources. In that regard, the civil service reform is critical. We cannot deliver some of the high ideas we think we should deliver with the current civil service we have, both in terms of capacity and integrity. So, and also morale because of the low pay. So that's an area we have to look at, and it's really a struggle. The inertia, there's challenge, there's fight back, but we have to do something about civil service. A lot of disguised unemployment, a lot of concentration of people in offices without delivery, serious efficiency-related issues there. So institutional building, focusing on human resource, is critical. As we understand, institutions mean people, so you have to get the right people. It means rules. We are enacting several rules and proclamations to also make things work on system, and then the behavior associated with the combination of the two. So that behavior gradually will come, but we have to focus on human resources right now because the capacity issues are there. Number 4 is women and youth, as you have said. We have to do more than what we have been doing on both fronts. And for that, we need to sit and to develop some benchmarks to be able to measure if we have made progress or not. But the commitment is really there. 30% of the parliamentarians of the region are women, and not only women selected on affirmative action, but competent women, educated women who have degrees, who have experiences. Are we bringing them to positions of responsibility in the way we need? No. A serious challenge in that, and we have to overcome that. And it's right now a challenge we are facing. Number 5 is 3 years. How we manage the end of the term is equally important. So, from political transition perspective, we need to think ahead and see where we will be in 3 years' time. If you look for problems in this region, there is a lot, but also we see the progress, particularly investment and private sector is thriving. Huge amount of resources coming to the private sector. Businesses, the service, agro-processing, agriculture, we see a lot of change and construction. But all of this will depend on the contribution of peace. And I believe as a country, the major problem we have in Ethiopia is the violence, the recurring violence. The recent war, I think, has cost 1.5 trillion. How many years do you have to work to recover that? While the population is also increasing. So peace is a key issue for all of this, and that requires a lot of thinking. Finally, I would like to thank all of the participants of today's event. You have really spent a good time here, while you had other also issues and work. So thank you, particularly the donors who come here, USAID team, EU Robert, Sweden Ambassador Hansen, particularly thanks to Sweden for their role in drought response, rural solutions initiative as well, and for Ambassador's personal commitment to the region. We also like to thank our UN colleagues, Turan and his team from UNDP, and the rest of the colleagues here at the AFP, who have been feeding our people for years and years. Yes, there are difficulties in how the food aid is managed and the thinking around it, but the WFP has been a key partner, really, and we want to thank. Also, like to thank other partners here, UNICEF, FAO, UN agencies. If I miss some, it's just because I have forgotten to mention or I'm disorganized in how I should have listed them. But we really thank. The thinking is different. Maybe the part that I come from UN background have helped me in overcoming some of the cynicism seen among governments when it comes to dealing with development partners. We know what you do, and we appreciate that. We know what you do, and we appreciate. There are challenges, but we can overcome through discussion on those challenges, how we pass them. And we also like to thank other colleagues who are not from UN, other partners who have attended today's meeting. We hope today's media review launch will not be an academic exercise. We think it will have a real impact. We have already seen some clear commitment from the donors who came here and spoke. On the government side, we are committed to facilitate the work, and we will be also doing our part in making your life and work easier in the region. With this, I would like to conclude, and hopefully with the next review of the plan we meet, we will be able to articulate what has moved and what have we achieved. Thank you so much. Appreciate your presence. Thank you.